Having been promoted to interim head coach in May when Charlotte FC were lacking direction, Christian Lattanzio fell just short of guiding the Crown into the postseason by the end of the campaign. His work has been rewarded with an extension offered and signed. Delighted to be joined now by Coach Lattanzio. Welcome back to the hot seat, and I would be remiss if I didn't start by congratulating you on your extension. I'm sure that you are looking forward to 2023. How are you feeling right now?
First of all, thank you. Happy to be here and feeling great and looking forward to the season. I'm already thinking, not just me, but with the coaching staff and the players, we're already thinking we want a little bit of a break, of a holiday, but at the same time, which is going to be for the coach and the coaching staff really short, because we will be working already on the next season. A little bit longer for the players, but they have been training in the postseason as you showed on the social media. Really looking forward. I think we have a good group of players that they are working well. Even in the postseason, they are putting intensity, which is very refreshing to see. And we are really looking forward to next season.
Let's talk about your interim tag for a second. I mean, for a while, there must have been some uncertainty about your future. Did that weigh you down in any way? Did you find that it was perhaps an obstacle that you had to get through?
Not at all. In my case, not at all. My focus was from day one to help the club, that showed that they had trust in me. And I wanted to repay that, first of all, to the people that offered me this opportunity, to the fans that I thought that they were magnificent from day one, obviously to our players that they have been a pleasure to work with. And so, like many people said before me, every coach has an interim tag on, whether that's visible or whether it's not, is there.
It doesn't matter, right?
It doesn't really matter, no. It's Ancelotti once said that unless you get fired, you cannot call yourself a coach. And so, honestly, Eric, that didn't bother me at all. The only thing that bothered me, the pressure that I had, it was put to me by myself, because I wanted to make sure that I gave my best to the players. And that I was clear with the information I was providing them. And then after that, people might like the style we play, people might not like the style we play, people might like the style I coach, and people might not. But that's part of life. In any walk of life you take. And so I had a lot of pressure, but not certainly the one from the interim tag.
You just mentioned tactics, and I think we'll touch on that a little bit later. You take over in May. What's your immediate priority as the new head coach? What did you feel like you had to deal with immediately?
To make sure that I was clear in communicating the differences between the way I saw football, or certain part of the football, to what they were doing before. So, for example, I wanted us to defend in a different way. The difficulties in those circumstances is that you are doing that while you are trying to win games during the season. Because our sport, like professional sport or sport in general, is about emotions. So if you win, you are high. If you don't, you can be a little bit low. So the difficulties was to try to be, in my case, was to try to be as defensively solid as we could, simply because at least if we don't concede too much to the opposition, we can always create something. But my game, as you saw, as the season went on, was more to be an attacking team and to be defensive, but to be defensive really high. And that I knew it took time, so you could see that there was an evolution, and there was time that this evolution was taking place, that unfortunately we were conceding and changing from the way we started. And so we had a few games in which we didn't get the result we wanted, and I can understand that created doubts, and that created anxiety, negativity in the supporters. That's part of being a supporter. When you like a team, you want your team to win all games. But that was physiological. It's impossible to go to the point where you want to be without going through those steps. You just hope that those steps, when they happen, you have a little bit of luck that you get the result, but that process is inevitable.
Would you say that was your biggest challenge coming into your first role as a head coach?
Yeah, that was a difficult task, because you have already players that they are used to different information, because every coach rightly put his own flavor onto the team. And on top of that, this is a team that is newly formed, players that have experience in different leagues, but it's the first time that they actually play together. And so the difficulties in this moment is actually multiplied, if you like. But we found a group of players that it was versatile, that it was clever, and they were really applied. They applied themselves on a daily basis. And another thing that I wanted is that we were increasing our intensity in training, and over the course of the year, that was one of the things that I have been more proud to see our boys to increase the way they train, and that actually spilled off in the games, especially in the last part of the season.
You also benefited from the fact that you had built relationships with these players. Was there an unexpected challenge in taking up this role, one that perhaps you didn't expect?
The work that I did as an assistant is what I was used to take players and to have a path for them, to see where they were. So obviously, like I did before, I studied the roster, I studied individually how they were, and looking at images of them, videos in the previous clubs in which they were, and to try to work on things that I discussed with them, discussing with the coaching staff, the things that I thought that they could have been put in place. When you become head coach, obviously this time decrease a little bit, because you have different tasks to consider.
Different responsibilities.
Different responsibility, and so it's very clear in my mind how I want to improve the players, and sometimes also the evolution of how we are playing, to see a player in one position, like Brandt, for example, staying with him as a pure 6, and then I thought that he could play this number 8 role, given that DJ was playing really well and we needed a little bit more presence in midfield. That kind of relationship that I had with the players before, of course, helped. I loved working with this group of players. I said many times, and I keep saying it. And whether I was in a position of an assistant or whether as a head coach now, doesn't change. And my passion is always to improve the players. But like I said to them today, and I said to them many times, for me the person always comes first, because we want to build something that is lasting, that has got some solidity, and you need to have solid characters.
Is that sort of everyday communication about things outside the world of soccer?
There is an element of that, but also what character they show in training. They have to be intense in training, they have to bring intensity, mental intensity, physical intensity. They have to train hard, because I believe that especially in the football that we are living now, that we are all connected and we can get access to all kind of information just by clicking on our mouse. Football evolves rapidly, and what is the constant in the top level of football is the intensity of playing. So now it's been for a few years, but even more now, that the football talent, the ability with the ball is not enough if you don't have also intensity. So today a player needs to be effective and really good in his position, as well as be intense the way he trains and the way he plays on the pitch.
In your perspective, based on your long career, do you feel that players will practice more intensely, play more intensely when they have a better relationship with their head coach?
Of course, that helps. But the relationship is always, in my opinion, is given by a number of criteria. One is that there has to be mutual respect. They need to understand that I value them as person first, that I like them, and then after I have to take decision who plays, who doesn't. But as long as they train hard, as long as they give their best, an opportunity always will come. If there is one thing I learned in my career is that if you do the right things, if you keep doing well, if you keep training hard even when it looks like that you are not considered, somehow life will give you an opportunity. How? I don't know, could be an injury, could be a player that gets a red card in your position, could be a lack of form. In many different ways, could be a trade, but the job of each player is to get ready. So for me, players that they give up and say, you know, coach, but it doesn't matter how I train, if I train well, you still play the other guy, this is not for me. That kind of player is, we want players that especially they show character when things are difficult.
Danny Rios comes to mind because before he was back in the lineup, there was a spell where he didn't even make the squad list, and yet he transforms himself into one of the most pivotal players at the end of the campaign.
Yeah, Danny has been, is one of those players. We had a very open conversation at one point regarding things that I didn't like that he was doing, and he was open to say things he didn't like that I did, and this is it was a very mature conversation that I think we had, that I enjoyed, and for me, but the most important thing is that he was always training well, and so after, when somebody is training well, then opportunity will come, as I said before. The same I can say for DJ, for Derek, that he was out of the squad, and he was keeping pushing in training, and at some point he becomes very visible. As a coaching staff, we review every training session that we have, we video every session that we have, we look back on a daily basis, we discuss as a staff, and so if you do the things well, they will emerge, we will talk about it, even though the players might not know, I think they know, but right. It might look that they are on one side, but we discuss on a daily basis, and if they knew how much thinking and how much talk we do about them, they would be surprised.
Let's talk about your first game against the Rebels. In fact, let's talk about most of the campaign as it happened. An important first win against the Rebels, one of the top teams in the league. How important for you, or how much pressure did you feel before that first game about needing to get a result? Or was it sufficient to say the performance was good even though we didn't win, had you not won that game?
Yeah, for me the most important thing in that situation was to get a team that showed energy, that showed commitment, that showed how to play against a team that we played only a couple of weeks before, and they create us difficulties. And also because it was not an easy situation for many of us, given how the change took place. And so the most important thing is to show our fans that regardless what happened, we are there for them, we are there to represent Charlotte FC in the best possible way. So the result was the icing on the cake, but I thought that the boys understood well how they played. We had a few days to prepare the game against them. We knew what they were, the strength that they had, and we tried to counteract those strengths. And the boys, in my opinion, they worked really well. And they were, sometimes, you know, you get luck on your side, sometimes you don't. In that case, we did, because we scored a goal with Ben from a long range with a deflection. Yeah. But I think overall we deserved the win, because apart from the 2-0, we were, you know, fighting toe-to-toe against one of the most resilient and difficult teams that is around. You
had some really important results at the beginning of your tenure. And then all of a sudden, the team skids a little bit. There are 3 consecutive games that are lost. How did you process that spell? Because it was truly the first time you had been in that situation as a head coach.
The one defining moment for me was the defeat in Miami. that, you try to, or wrongly I was trying to protect the team, to try to get a result, because we needed the results as well to build confidence. But in the end I was kind of not trying to put exactly the football I wanted to play. And that was my way of trying at the time to protect the players. So I decided to change and to go with the full press, with the way that I really believe football has to be played. And then this transition, obviously, we were a little bit unlucky in those situations, that every time we conceded the situation in transition, we conceded a goal. And with Cincinnati as well, I thought that the boys were great in processing well, in taking well those defeats, because they could see that there was, at least the feeling of them on the pitch was that they were in control of the game. And then after, we didn't get the result that we wanted, but the performance was good. And my job is to look a little bit different at the game from just the final result. And I know that the final result didn't appeal to many people, because when you are a supporter, and I don't forget when I grew up in Rome, and I was a very, very animated supporter. So I remember that when you lose, you are really down, and when you win, you are so happy. But when you are in my position, you have to look things a little bit different. You have to lead, and you have to lead with the facts. And the fact was that in all those games, we had more chances, more expected goals, more possession, more clear chances. We just didn't take those. So
you felt like you were headed in the right direction despite the results.
I think so, and that was also confirmed by many players that I was talking with, that on the pitch they felt good. We just didn't pay enough attention in certain moments or in certain situations, even though we were training to counteract those situations. But that can happen. And we have been punished heavily in those games. Every time we made a mistake, we conceded a goal, and it looked like that the luck was really not on our side. And I'm not a guy that wants to talk about luck all the time, but in certain moments, that can be the difference between winning or not winning, especially at the stage in which we were. But the boys took on the chin, and they kept working really well in training. That's what gave me a lot of confidence. They were training hard, they were training well, and we needed a shift. And when Cincinnati game came, we lost another game in which we didn't deserve to lose. And so we were doing our calculation, and my calculation was that from the first game until that point, normally this is the length of a preseason. So I said, guys, for us preseason is over. Now we know what to do. Now we are more familiar with our principle of play, and now we have to impose that from next game. And next game was New York City at home. And even though we went man down early in the second half, and we were playing against a team that a lot of people, they say that they were not in a good moment, but I knew they were in a good moment because they were winning games before us. And they lost that game, and they kept winning after us, and like it shows now. So I knew that we got the result against a team that was in form, and it was down to our resilience and the boys, willingness to get the result. Then we managed to win away from home in Chicago. It was late in the game, but I thought that we deserved even better in the first half, and it just came late, the result, but the performance was there. Then we played against Philadelphia, and then there was the Columbus game, but I felt that mini-season was our second pre-season, if you like, in terms at least of time that we had to digest the new information was over, and the boys showed what they could do when they put their heart into what they want to do.
So would you say that what prompted you to call it a 5-game mini-season had to do with the fact that it was still mathematically possible to make the playoffs, and everything or the entire season that you had been in charge of prior to those 5 games was a sort of preseason where you were able to ingrain your principles in the team. And the combination of the two transformed it into a very important mini season. That's pretty much it, right?
That was the case, and I felt that the boys were really working hard, not just on the pitch, but also we do a lot of videos and trying to understand at their best what I was trying to ingrain into them, the principles. So I could see that there was interest, that there was commitment into trying to understand and put into practice what we were doing. And the other thing is that, Eric, when you are at the end of season, it's very easy to put the focus on this end of season. And that, for me, instead we have to reshift everything and to focus, this is the begin of a mini season. So for the reasons you said, and it's 5 games, we are still in it. We now are more and more familiar because I showed them the stats that we were having in games, in real games. And so we need to focus on something that is tangible. So, because if you start to think it's the end of the season, and if we didn't get the result against New York City, we would have been, the last 4 weeks would have been really long and really pointless in a certain way, painful. But I thought that the boys were really, they had in them a lot of energy, a lot of football to be played. And so it would have been a shame just not to express this football that I could see on a daily basis in training.
And you underscored that point plenty of times in those press conferences. You kept saying about how hard they were training, that the mistakes were being corrected. So mini season done, a new season, you're now fully the head coach, and this is going to be your first off season as a head coach. And player decisions very much in your purview. Let's talk about signings. It seems to me that you have a roster now that is competitive and can compete to get into the playoffs. But surely you're looking at players that are available. So what's your role?
I am part of a collective role. Obviously, as a head coach, I have a certain responsibility. But at the same time, we have a department that is a scouting department. Their job is to look at players all over the world. So I also have to be humble in that, to understand that this guy's job is to look at players that probably I don't know, because every coach normally follows really closely the league in which he's working. In my case, because I've been working in 2 or 3 leagues, I always keep an eye on my ex-clubs and ex-players. So in that I have a little bit more vision in terms of, at least I look at the French league, I look at obviously at the Premier League, and as well as MLS. But at the same time, for as much as I can have, I think I can keep an eye on those leagues. My total focus is on my team, and therefore the scouts, they have instead their job and their focus is to look at players all over the world. So I need to take into consideration their views. My job is to give them the characteristics of the player that I believe we need to move forward. I believe we are competitive, like we showed in the last few games, and even before, in my opinion. But at the same time, like we will evolve, the opposition will evolve. So all the other teams will go on the market and will improve the roster because it's their job. And our job is to do the same. We have to create more competition for position, and sometimes to get the best out of a player is not just to get individual attention, but it's also to make him compete with somebody that will make him become the best version of himself. Because sometimes if you don't have competition, you think, no matter what, I'm going to play because I am better than the guy I'm competing against. So we have to look at bringing in few new faces that will improve the quality of Charlotte FC, also for the ones that will stay.
And the scouting team has done excellently. I mean, all you have to do is just look at the most recent acquisitions as well in the summer. Byrne and Nuno and Adil, who came in and had an instant impact. Do you feel maybe that had they come sooner, because they had to deal with their visas, that perhaps the playoffs would have been not more realistic, but you would have attained them?
I'm not sure. I think that these guys, they exceeded our expectations, because each player, no matter, even if you get a DP and you spend a lot of money on him, you know that is still a human being and he needs adaptation. Unless he comes from this league, and very often they come from different leagues, you have to give them time. And even in the best leagues in the world, you have an example of guys that they are paid even 60, 70, 80 millions, whether it's euros, dollars, or pounds, and still takes them few months to adapt. Because it's a different lifestyle, sometimes it's a different language, different culture, and you have to give them a little bit of time. It's physiological, it applies to everyone, to all of us, in every walk of life. But especially in Nathan, in Adil, which is a young guy coming from France, and Nuno, they adapted immediately, which is also credit to the group that they found, that welcomed them and made them feel at ease. But these guys, they hit the ground and run, and they contributed immediately to our style. And so that was great work from the front office. At the same time, you need a little bit of luck, because you have to pick. Sometimes you don't see hidden parts of the character, and the characters we brought in, they are exceptional. And so we want to have that kind of impact from the new faces that we are going to sign.
Given that next year is a second season, have there been any clear objectives delineated, things that you have to achieve or are expected to achieve in 2023?
I mean, the first thing that comes to mind, obviously, we want to do better than what we have done, so we want to go to the playoff. Because we know that once we go into the playoff, then that is a mini season, and so you can dream if you hit form at the right time. At the same time, next season will be a new competition taking place with the Mexican team.
The Leagues Cup.
Yes, the Leagues Cup. So we need to take that into consideration, and I think we have to be ambitious. We need to be humble. We need to be managing expectations, because if we want to compete to win, this is one thing I learned over the years, is everybody likes to talk about winning. But winning is made by many components that you cannot control. What you can control is how you're going to compete to win. And for me, I would be happy as a first step to compete to win, so to be in contention to win until the end. And then after, there are episodes where you can find a team that is flying in that moment, or you might have your key players that they are not playing or they are not available. So there are many things that you cannot control. But what we have to aim for is to be as competitive as possible, to compete to win something, or to be one of the teams that will fight to win something.
You've talked a lot this season about building an identity, principles of play. Where are you, or where is the team insofar as that identity is concerned? Do you feel like you've managed to bestow the identity on this team that you want them to have?
Yeah, I think it's work in progress, obviously, because we will have a pre-season. But also the idea of having these 2 weeks of keep training in post-season is to reinforce those ideas, to reinforce this imprinting of identity. For me, this is the most important thing that the club can have. To have so that when people see us playing, they recognize the style that Charlotte FC has. And this is it's not easy to do when you are a new team, but at the same time, it's easier to do when you are a new team, because you don't have to erase a previous identity. You don't have any identity before. You have to just have it, and then hopefully to give it to your team. So this is the biggest challenge that we have, is to create an identity that when people see Charlotte FC playing, that can recognize our style, and hopefully they enjoy our style and they become our supporters because of that.
Well, I think that's already happened. I think people already recognize the product that you've put on the field, and they're looking forward to seeing more. Shifting gears very quickly, because right now you're in the middle of training, even though it is the off season. You're going to have a break, which you said you were looking forward to, and the World Cup is going to be played. Italy, once again, not in it. I'm sorry that I brought it up.
No problem.
Although it kind of gives me a little bit of pleasure, being Portuguese. What kind of World Cup viewer are you? Are you somebody who watches every single game, or do you just watch some games, you know, the biggest matchups?
No, I like to watch as many games as I can. Plus, I will be with friends. My son also is a big football fan, so I'm looking forward to have time with him and watching the World Cup together. He has the luxury that he can also support France from his mom's side, and he was born in England. I will be just looking as a neutral in this case.
Which sometimes is better. You don't have the pressure of seeing your team perform.
No, but I also had the luxury of working with the national team and to go to a World Cup. 2010. And so it's an amazing experience. I can say that football-wise is not the most interesting for many reasons, because if you want to see what the trend of football is, you have to look at Champions League or to look at the biggest leagues in the world, right? Because these are guys that train together, they get put together by some of the biggest clubs in the world. And so the national teams is always like the best in terms of emotion, because you see the best players of your country playing for your country. So this is, this is priceless. And from that point of view, this emotional side, no one can give this kind of emotion. But football-wise, sometimes it's not the most interesting, because you have players that they are used to play with a certain systems, and as a coach or as a coaching staff, you don't have a lot of time to school them to the way that the coach wants to play them. And very often, in the past, that was true for Spain in 2010 or Germany. The team that has got the most players from one successful team, Barcelona, Bayern Munich, they have more success to win because, and this is clever from the coach of the national team to keep that kind of harmony and that kind of understanding and give it to the national team with few addiction of players. When you have to put sometimes two players that they are great for one team, two players great from another team, two players from another one, this might not be, on paper it looks great, but in reality there is no cohesion, yes.
I'm sure you're going to be looking to Poland a little bit more closely, because in all likelihood you'll have two of your players there in Świderski and Jóźwiak. I want to ask you something about Świderski that I was going to ask you before. First designated player in club history. That puts a lot of weight on his shoulders. You switched his position. You put him in the 10 role, and he seems to have really embraced it. In fact, it was from that position that he was so instrumental against Chicago in that second half. First of all, what was it that made you put him in that position? And secondly, are you concerned that if he has a very good World Cup, I'm sure he already has plenty of suitors out there trying to pry him away from Charlotte FC, but are you afraid that an offer that will be impossible to reject will come through?
No, because I'm not so scared, because I think that the role of the vast majority of the football clubs is to give value to the players that they have. And so we are no different. It's great to see Karol doing well and to be given an opportunity for Poland. And when he was given, in fairness to him, he always took it. Even the last game that they won, he scored a winner against Wales. When you have your players doing well, it's inevitable that clubs will come, will make offers. For as much as we want Karol to stay, for as much as we want the best players to stay, we also have to be ready to the possibilities that they will go, and this is success for the club. As long as we find
adequate replacements.
of course, and this is the challenge that we all have, you know. But for now, we have Caro. We are happy to have him, and we wish him well in the World Cup. And I'm not the one that will be hoping that he doesn't play, so he doesn't show. I want him to play as much as possible. I want him to do as good as possible, because I know how important it is in the life of a football player, of a person, to have such an experience, to be able to give to your country that kind of emotions is priceless. So for me, it would be unbelievably selfish to wish him that he doesn't do well. I want him to do as good as he can with Poland, and this applies to Camille as well, of course.
And it also highlights the quality of the league and how much it has improved. Mister, thank you so much for your time. It has been an honor to call your first season as head coach. Thank you so much for your time, and much success going forward.
Thank you, Eric. Thank you very much. Thanks.